Kate Korsh is back with her third book featuring Oona Bramblegoop Sideways Magic. This time it's Fairies versus Leprechauns. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Kate Korsh is the author of two previous books in this series, Newbie Fairy and A Boy in the Fairy World. Oona Bramblegoop, the Underwear Fairy, is back again in this third book and still doing her best, but things still go sideways in Fairies versus Leprechauns. Kate, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is the third book to feature this fairy who doesn't quite have her act together. Tell us about the origination of Oona Bramblegoop.
So Oona, her magic comes out a little sideways. She has big dreams and hopes and always has the best intentions, but because of the way her magic works, sometimes she has to take a few extra steps to get there, but she eventually does. So, I mean, a lot of the book's themes are about perseverance and, learning from your mistakes, learning from failure, and improving on your tactics, I guess.
And these fairies in the book, they're unlike fairies that you may have read about other places because they're not perfect, and they also have certain duties assigned to them. Of course, we know about the Tooth Fairy, but Oona is the Underwear Fairy.
Yes, she has underwear magic that makes protective underwear for children who might be accident prone and end up in the school nurse's office a lot or always have the box of Band-Aids next to their bed. So she provides them with protective underwear. And the way it works is it has auto wedgie magic. So when they start to get distracted and they're about to trip and fall, the auto wedgie magic will pull them up short and get them focused again. So that's how the underwear magic works. And in this third book, you mentioned how they're not perfect. Her idol, Oona's idol, is the Tooth Fairy. She has looked up to the Tooth Fairy her whole life, and they become friends throughout the series. And in the third book, it's the Tooth Fairy who's showing some not so perfect sides of herself. And there's a little bit of an ethical question about where she gets the money to give to the children when she exchanges money for teeth. And there's also some questions about the leprechauns, because leprechauns are seen by the fairies sort of as grumpy and mischievous, but it turns out that they too are more complicated and have some good sides as well.
So Lucy, as you pointed out, there's some questions there, but Lucy's power is in danger. I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but what can you tell us about the danger that Lucy is facing and how Oona can help save the day?
Well, it turns out, I mean, this isn't a huge spoiler because it happens in like the second chapter, but the leprechauns are not so pleased that Lucy has been collecting gold from all the ends of the rainbow, even though technically she's within her rights by the rules of the fairy binder, which is their law of the land. And so the leprechauns are fighting back. They want to reclaim their gold. And so this is a big problem for Lucy because then she doesn't know what she's going to give all the children. And of course, the children, when they put their tooth under their pillow at night and nothing is there in the morning, they're very disappointed. And all that disappointment and lack of belief now in the Tooth Fairy can have dire consequences for a fairy.
Well, in addition to the main story, there are fun fairy facts that you have sprinkled throughout the book.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Oh, gosh. I just love to add little gems. When I was a kid, I always liked a book that had extra little information in the margins. And when I was a teacher as well, I noticed that kids would be drawn to that. And it's enjoyable just for like putting in a little joke. But also it gives you a break. If you're reading along in the narrative, you can take a little break and then get back into it, which is, I think, nice for kids in terms of how their attention spans work. Do you want me to read you a fun fairy fact?
Yeah, if you would, give us a sample of a fun fairy fact.
Okay, so they love glitterberries, right? They're often talking about glitterberry cakes and glitterberry cookies. That's a special fairy treat. So I write in here a little more information to help the reader understand what glitterberries are. So, fun fairy fact, glitterberries start out as regular blackberries. Blackberry Bog, the capital of the fairy world, has plenty of those. After the berries are picked, they are taken to the warehouse, dunked in secret syrup, and rolled in sweet sparkles collected from the moment sunlight hits the spray of the magic waterfall. Then the berries are spread out on to crystallize on giant cookie sheets. So that's another piece of the fun fairy facts that I like, is just adding to the world with lots of magic and sparkle and glitter, all that fun stuff.
And again, hopefully not getting into spoiler territory, but there's a problem with the glitter berries. And in fact, there may be some theft involved here that needs to be solved.
Exactly. There, the leprechauns try a lot of mischievous ways to retaliate against the fairies because they feel like they've been wronged. So some of it involves the glitterberries, yes.
I'm talking with Kate Korsh about Oona Bramblegoop Sideways Magic, Fairies versus Leprechauns, and our conversation will continue. If you're enjoying this discussion, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. And thank you. One of the themes I sort of see in this book is letting kids know, and we should say this is a chapter book. So for what age group are we talking about here?
It's ideally 7 to 10 is the real sweet pocket. But I've also had a lot of parents report to me that kindergarten, first, second can also enjoy the book as a bedtime story that the parents read a chapter every night. So really any elementary grade would enjoy the book.
So the point I was trying to make here is that, these kids are small and these fairies are small, but they're still a powerful force. And the leprechauns are too. In fact, there's a rule for the fairies that if a creature, a person, whatever you want to call him, is below a certain number of inches, that the fairies have to protect them. And so there's a point in the book where Oona gets corrected and reminded that, no, she needs to protect the leprechaun because they're below 6 inches or whatever it is.
Yes.
And the leprechaun kind of takes offense to that because he feels like, well, I may be small, but, that doesn't mean I need to be protected. I have my own sort of, personage and, he's a bit insulted.
Yes, yes. and he talks, quite indignantly about how he's a full 4.5 inches, and how dare they. That's actually close to home for me because I have 2 children and my oldest, my son, has always been very small. He's always been the smallest one in the class. And it's just interesting that even when people are not teasing him or bullying him, they do feel free to comment a lot about his height and bring it into focus. And sometimes that's uncomfortable for him. So I was sort of channeling him for the leprechaun experience because, it's not always great to have somebody pointing out your physical features that you maybe are not the proudest of.
Well, there's a lot of humor in this book, a lot of underwear humor, and underwear used in interesting ways, like underwear umbrellas.
Yeah, one of the things Oona sort of figures out about her magic is that she does the underwear magic the best, right? She has a lot of practice. Every night she's going and providing protective underwear for children all over the world. So she's got a lot of practice making underwear. So if her magic isn't working well right away, she'll try to weave underwear into the solution to get the desired results. So at one point, she's trying to make some sort of protection from an attack that they're getting of glitterberries, and her first attempt is not successful at all. And then she uses the underwear and she makes underwear umbrellas. And they all hold these umbrellas that are made out of big pairs of underwear, which are pretty cute.
So do you find that the kids really enjoy that underwear humor in your books?
Oh my gosh, for sure. Underwear humor and a little bit of, very light, mild potty humor. We talk about toots a little bit. But yeah, anything about underwear is, I mean, my kids loved, any book about underwear. Of course, they read all the Captain Underpants. So I was like, this is an avenue to a kid's funny bone right away.
And of course, you have rainbow boogers.
Yeah, yes.
And not just your regular one-color booger. This is a rainbow booger.
Well, and I love the idea that fairies are so magical that even their boogers have like wonderful positive qualities.
Well, I do want to give credit to another creature that appears throughout your books, and that's the slugs. Slugs with attitude.
Yes, I've heard from a lot of people who have read my book, a lot of moms who've read it with their children, that they used to see slugs on the sidewalk or climbing up the steps of their front porch, and they would be disgusted by them. And now they see all the slugs as their little friends because the slugs in the book are so wonderful and fun and funny, and they actually help out in a lot of emergencies. So Oona's little cousin, who's another major character, Horace, is the slug fairy. He takes care of all the slugs, and the slug slime is what keeps the fairy world invisible from the human world, so that humans can't see the fairy world. So they're very important. They're essential.
So this is an ongoing series, and it sounds like the kids have really responded positively to it. We talked a little bit about height, humor, obviously, but what are some of the other themes that this book explores and you hope that kids take away from it, in addition to just a fun read?
Well, it's interesting. I did a school visit recently, and I hadn't thought of this intentionally as a specific target audience, but because Oona has this sideways magic and she gets things done a little differently, some children with learning differences were letting me know that this really resonated for them, that they connected with that. So, this theme of being outside the norm and celebrating that and having that be not only okay, but sometimes, wonderful. I think that's a theme that shows up in every book in the series.
Well, this book, I assume because you're dealing with leprechauns, it's printed in green ink, and the illustrations are all in green. Tell us a bit about those illustrations.
Oh, yes. Marta Altes is my illustrator, and she's a wonderful illustrator, and she really has the little quirky personalities of all the characters down. All the illustrations are in multiple shades of green. Let me just show you one nice spread here. So here they are, and you can just see all the variations of green, and the text is all green, and the book itself under the jacket is green. And the first book, of course, was pink, and the second one was this wonderful bluish purple. So the fourth one is going to be a nice orange, like a really rich orange. So you get this really wonderful jewel tone feeling when they're all sitting together.
Well, now that you've teased me with the orange, can you tell us a little bit about the story that goes along with that color?
Sure. So the fourth book is coming out in June. It's called When Fairies Go Too Far. And really throughout the series, I've just been ramping up the stakes. So this fourth book is really high stakes. And it deals with Molly, who is the head of the Fairy Council, and she is sort of the boss of all of Blackberry Bog. And she gets a little power hungry, and she starts adding rules to the fairy binder until all of the fairies can't possibly follow every rule in the binder. And they start getting their wands suspended and their magic suspended because they keep accidentally breaking rules. There's just so many of them. So I'm hoping, that children will respond to that, because I know there are some environments, maybe at school or in some other public setting, where they feel like, oh my gosh, there's too many rules about where I can sit and what I can do with my feet and how loud I can be and all that stuff.
The chapter book is Oona Bramblegoop Sideways Magic, Fairies versus Leprechauns by Kate Korsh. Kate, thank you for talking with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you'd like to purchase Fairies versus Leprechauns, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. Thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.